Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We have more gaming and PlayStation news, rumours and leaks to go over. If you enjoyed today's video, please show your support by hitting that like button and don't forget to tune into the PlayStation podcast every Sunday at 7 PM. So we have a former Microsoft and Xbox executive that has come out and made a shocking admission. Laura Fryer, who's been part of the Xbox since the very beginning, has come out with some pretty blunt thoughts about where the brand is right now. Now, this isn't just any former developer. Fryer helped launch Xbox as a platform. She worked on major projects like the original Gears of War. She later became the general manager of Epic Games' Seattle office. So when she speaks about Xbox, she's not speaking from the sidelines as someone who doesn't know what she's talking about. She is very well connected with people who still work at Microsoft and the Xbox gaming division. She was there when it all began. In a recent YouTube video, Fryer didn't hold back. She said flat out, "Personally, I think the Xbox hardware is dead." I mean, that's a big statement coming from someone who's been there for multiple years. Let's break down what she's actually talking about here. Fryer feels that Microsoft is slowly stepping away from making traditional game consoles. She pointed to Xbox's recent moves like the partnership with ASUS on the Rogue Ally handheld device, as signs that Microsoft is shifting its focus. The idea, according to Fryer, is that Xbox is pivoting away from producing its own hardware and instead trying to grow Game Pass as its core business. She mentioned that the Rogue Ally deal seems more like a slow exit from the hardware space rather than a bold new entry into handheld gaming. And if you think about it, this kind of makes sense. Microsoft has already started making some of its previous exclusive titles available on PlayStation, including Gears of War Reloaded, which is launching on PlayStation in August of this year. Fryer also questioned the long-term strategy behind all of this. Yes, Xbox has a solid backlog of games, and yes, remakes like Oblivion have performed well, but where are the new hits? The big games that will carry the brand forward for the next decade, for the next 10 or 20 years. Where are those franchises? She praised upcoming titles like Clockwork Revolution, but wondered aloud if that and others like it will be enough to keep the Xbox name relevant going forward. Despite Microsoft recently announcing it's working with AMD on its next generation Xbox hardware, Fryer's point remains, are these moves just temporary steps before a complete shift to services like Game Pass? It's a question that Xbox fans have every right to ask right now. And if you think about what Microsoft is doing right now with the Xbox brand, I mean, we discussed this in episode 3 of the PlayStation podcast last night, but if you look at what's happening right now, we have a third-party manufactured handheld, we have a third-party manufactured VR headset, and it looks like we may be getting a third-party manufactured console. There's no innovation in these products from an Xbox perspective. These are somebody else's products with an Xbox logo slapped on it. The long-term strategy of exiting from making any Xbox hardware seems to be something that Microsoft is championing right now. They've already set the stage by starting to make all of their games available across all platforms, and this move just further strengthens the idea that we're seeing the slow death of the Xbox hardware. And it's not just one person who's come out and said stuff like this. It's lots of different, very experienced former Xbox execs, people who know the industry, people who have taken Xbox to the very top during its 360 days. And to add another perspective and another viewpoint here, one of the most vocal voices recently has been Mike Ybarra, another former Xbox executive who spent nearly 20 years at Microsoft. If you don't know, Ybarra held some pretty major roles. He helped shape Xbox Live and Xbox Game Pass, and later went on to become the president of Blizzard Entertainment. In a recent post on social media, Ybarra didn't hold back his concerns. He said, "It's tough to see Xbox confused about who it is and what it should be." According to him, Xbox seems to be struggling with its identity, trying to do too many things at once without committing to a clear direction. Ybarra believes it's time for Xbox to make a choice. He says the company should stop trying to juggle everything, hardware, services, publishing, and instead focus on one core identity. In his view, Xbox's future should be as a content powerhouse, not a hardware manufacturer. In his words, they should aim to become the world's largest publisher of entertainment content and leave the rest behind. He even added that trying to be both a console maker and a content platform is like straddling the fence, and in business, that's rarely a winning strategy. And when he was asked about whether he had any inside knowledge of the rumored layoffs at Xbox, Ybarra made it clear he hasn't been involved with the company for many years, and he doesn't know what's going on behind closed doors. Still, his opinions come from years of experience in the Xbox ecosystem, and they're hard to ignore. Ybarra's concerns echo that of Laura Fryer, and as she said, it's hard for her to watch the value that she's helped build over the years get eroded over time. From her perspective, Xbox is moving away from making its own consoles and instead relying on partnerships with other companies. She pointed to Xbox's recent collaborations with ASUS, Meta, and AMD, specifically mentioning the upcoming Rogue Ally handheld, which is being co-developed by ASUS. In 2025, Microsoft is pushing for a more multi-platform approach than ever before. Games that were once exclusive to Xbox are now being released on PlayStation 5. This kind of move is practically unheard of for a company that's built its brand on good exclusive games in previous generations, but it's happening, and it supports the idea that Xbox sees its future in services like Game Pass, not necessarily in selling hardware. Having said that, Microsoft has confirmed that it's working on a next generation Xbox console. The big question really is, what is that console? What's it actually going to be? Will it be a traditional box like the Series X or the Series S? Or will it be more like a mini PC offering access to a broader range of apps and stores, not just the Xbox content and storefront? Right now, we don't really know. There's lots of different rumors coming out, but definitively, we don't know. But given everything that we're hearing from both insiders and ex-employees, it wouldn't be surprising if the next Xbox looked and felt very different from what we're used to. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below, and let's move on. If you are a fan of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, you might want to keep your eyes peeled. The pirate-themed entry in the series might be getting a full remake soon, and recent developments suggest that it's more than just wishful thinking. During a fan event, Matt Ryan, who is the actor who voiced Edward Kenway in Black Flag, dropped what could be a big hint. When a fan mentioned replaying the game, Ryan responded, "Especially this one, there's a reason I say that, but I can't say anything." That's the kind of wink wink, nudge nudge that tends to get rumors flying, and this isn't the first time we've heard rumors about a Black Flag remake. Back in early 2024, someone spotted on a Ubisoft Singapore developer's LinkedIn profile that the remake had actually entered production as early as September 2023. Since then, various sources have reported that the updated game could be coming as early as 2026. Ubisoft hasn't made anything official yet, but if these hints are to be believed, fans of the series might be setting sail with Edward Kenway once again before too long. Given how well loved the original was for its open-world naval combat and rich Caribbean setting, a remake could be a massive hit, especially with today's graphics and gameplay improvements. I think, personally, from my perspective, Black Flag was one of the better Assassin's Creed games. I certainly enjoyed it, and yeah, if it is going to happen, and if there is going to be a remake or a remaster of this game, then I'd certainly dive back into it. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this, and let's move on. Let's talk about a franchise that's been quietly flying under the radar over the last few years. Pun intended, because this game is Ace Combat. This month marks the 30th anniversary of the Flight Combat series, and fans got a special message from the series brand director, Kazutoki Kono. In a letter to fans, Kono thanked everyone who has supported Ace Combat over the last 3 decades. He acknowledged that while things have changed over the years, technology, values, and even their own team, the commitment to fans hasn't wavered. And then he dropped the line that caught everyone's attention. Everything is in place. It's time to take flight once again towards even greater heights. And while it wasn't an official announcement with a title and a trailer, the message seems to confirm that a new Ace Combat game is definitely on the way. The last major entry was Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown, and it launched more than 6 years ago on the PlayStation 4, and it was a massive hit. It sold over 6 million copies. The franchise as a whole has now surpassed 20 million units sold. Kono also reflected on how the franchise has endured by evolving with the times while staying true to what fans love: intense aerial battles and that unique blend of realism and arcade-style action. He wrapped up by saying that the connection with the fans is what keeps the series going, and that it's stronger now than ever before. I've always loved the Ace Combat games. They're completely different to the types of traditional single-player games that I would always play, but maybe that's why I enjoy them so much. Anyway, great news if you're a fan of a new Ace Combat game. Let me know, guys, your thoughts in the comments section, and let's move on and talk about Death Stranding 2 on the beach and how it's performing at launch, specifically within the UK market. Now, there's been a lot of talk around physical sales, and some early numbers have raised a few eyebrows, but I guess it's all about context, because before we jump to conclusions, we need to look at the bigger picture. At launch, Death Stranding 2 sold 66% fewer copies than the original Death Stranding did back in 2019, at least in the UK. Now, that might sound concerning at first glance, but that stat doesn't tell the full story. In fact, if you look closer, it says more about how the industry has changed rather than the game's success or failure. To put it into perspective, physical game sales across the board have taken a serious hit over the last 5 years or so. In 2024, box game sales only made up of around 4% of all video game spending in the UK, just 4%, and that's tiny. So the majority of players in the UK are now buying their games digitally. That change makes it a lot harder to directly compare how new releases sold versus older releases based on physical sales data alone. And let's be honest, finding physical copies of new games in retail stores is getting harder than it ever used to be. Unless you're shopping online or going to a very specialist store that sells only games, most retailers have scaled back the shelf space that they used to dedicate to box games. So a drop in physical sales isn't surprising. It's more a reflection of how the industry, unfortunately, is evolving than a red flag for Kojima Productions. Another comparison that's been floating around is between Death Stranding 2 and Astrobot. At launch, Death Stranding 2 sold 33% fewer boxed copies in the UK compared to Astrobot. But even that comparison needs a little bit of context. According to gaming journalist Chris Dring, Astrobot was unusually physical heavy. In other words, it was a bit of an outlier, a game that did surprisingly well with boxed copies when most others didn't. So while Death Stranding 2 sold less physically, that doesn't necessarily mean it performed poorly. Something else to consider is the Deluxe edition of Death Stranding 2, which offered early access, was only available digitally. So anyone who wanted to play early had no choice but to buy the game digitally. That would naturally drive up digital sales and make physical numbers look even smaller by comparison. And although we don't have official digital sales data just yet, there are signs that the game is doing very, very well online. On the UK PlayStation Store, Death Stranding 2 was ranked second in the best sellers list, just behind EA Sports FC 25, formerly known as FIFA. And FIFA's always up there, number 1 or 2. That's a strong position to be for Death Stranding, especially given the competition and the lack of concrete digital sales numbers being made public. Unfortunately, we don't get as much transparency from Sony as we'd like when it comes to things like concurrent players or total digital sales data. Unlike some other platforms, PlayStation doesn't publicly share all of that information, which makes it difficult to assess a game's full performance straight away. So for now, we'll need to wait for more complete data, especially the digital numbers, to become available before we draw any solid conclusions about how Death Stranding 2 is currently doing. Really sad to see physical games are being pretty much phased out. Really sad. I hate this happening. But the fact that Death Stranding is currently ranked number 2 in the UK behind only FIFA, and we don't have all the digital sales figures yet, and also taking a look at the Metacritic score of 90, listening to and reading all of the reports about the game and how well it's being received, I think we could all take an educated guess and say that the game has done really well in its opening week. No doubt we'll get more information regarding sales numbers during the week, which I'll bring to you as soon as those numbers have been released. So guys, let me know how you guys are getting on with Death Stranding 2. I'm having an absolute blast, as we discussed yesterday on the podcast. Fantastic game so far. I won't spoil anything for anybody, but 10 hours in, and it's an absolute brilliant game. Certainly my contender for Game of the Year so far. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments about the content discussed in today's video, and I'll catch you on the next video.